Hi, my name is Lana, and I am a sex, love, and relationship coach. I've also worked for over a decade doing energetic womb healing work with women, hosting women's circles, doing something called the art of feminine presence. And what I had happen in my life about almost 20 years ago is I underwent a kind of transformation in the experience of my period and my menstrual cycle. I used to have very raging, awful cramps that were quite debilitating. I relied on a lot of painkillers to get me through. And over time, it really took a toll on my health and on my life as well, which was very much dictated by my cycle, about dread of it, fear of it, trying to figure out how to manage professional, career life, relationships inside of a torturous kind of cycle that I came to a point in understanding like that I needed to heal it. And so at this point in time, I am working towards helping others heal this as well, heal the pain and the challenges related to PMS, cramping, but also, there are so many maladies, let's call them. There's so many disorders that affect women and affect them in their reproductive organs. And there are also, of course, so many challenges and difficulties that women face at the end of that fertility cycle when perimenopause and menopause rolls around as well. So I, after having, worked through this on my own, after working with so many women and really looking at like what's actually going on here, I wanted to share what I think is the mistake that we make and what I think the path is towards coming to a holistic and permanent healing. So, the mistake that we make, the mistake that we tend to make as women, but, as people in the society is that we blame the pain, we blame like any of the troublesome symptoms on the fact of the cycle itself. So, you have bad cramps and you blame the period. And so, yes, you wouldn't have the cramps if the period weren't there. But, the period in itself, the cycle in itself, the hormones and of themselves aren't actually the issue, right? The female body has these reproductive parts and it has this cycle that occurs, and it is intentional and perfect in its design, right? It isn't that the fact of a period, the fact of a cycle means that we're all kind of, screwed and that as women, we're meant to suffer. Uh, and for proof of that, you can see that this isn't the case for all women. Not all women or not all bleeding people have difficulty with their bleeding. Not all people have difficulty with, PMS or with perimenopause, but some do. So it isn't really that it's the sake of the period. Now, the pain, the discomfort, the symptoms are real. I'm not saying that they're not real. But to blame it on the actual fact of the cycle and the hormones and the whole system is the mistake. What it really is kind of coming down to as, an expression of a female body is that we experience this pain because we fight ourselves, because inside of ourselves, we've taken in this toxic, internalized misogyny, right? Because we live in a world, we grow up in a patterning and a conditioning, a culture that actively belittles, denigrates, hates, and is violent towards women. So, on so many subconscious levels, like we've taken this in, it's just normal, right? It's normal that to be a woman is to be an inferior class of human. We take it that to be a woman means that we suffer the curse of bleeding, of childbirth, right? We take on this story that somebody else has created that to be born a woman, a female, is a sin, and that we're going to be punished for it. So it's actually this internalized misogyny that just sort of like accumulates within ourselves, not just those messages, but the violence and the disrespect that we see and are subjected to, over and over again, lodges itself. And so we come to feeling pain because we are actually fighting and battling the very kind of fact and core of who we are. That's what I believe. That's what I have seen be the reason that we have difficulty with our periods, with our cycles, with our hormones, and with our menopause and our perimenopause. And at this point in time, like there is so much, information out there. There's so much that's being talked about, especially in terms of like medicine and science, where for a long time, women weren't part of experiments. There's very little that allopathic medicine offers in the way of healing this. They tend to go more for a cure, which will look usually like, well, let's control the hormones. We'll give you hormonal birth control, or let's take the parts out. Let's hysterectomy. It's one of the most commonly uh, done procedures that is elective. Like, what do you need it for? Let's take it out. Um, so it doesn't have a holistic view or respect for these parts. It views it largely, in my experience, as a pathology. It's like to be female, to have these parts is to exist in kind of a dangerous space. Like at any moment, these can turn on you and kill you. uh, Seriously, I heard this today in discussing this sentiment of like, women, to be a woman is to suffer. How often, think about also just how often as women we bond over the hell of a period, like how awful it is, or how awful it is to be going through perimenopause or menopause. So, look, these things can be difficult, but we don't actually need to hate on our bodies. This is another one that I hear a lot too. Why is my body punishing me? Well, I mean, why take it on in that way, right? But I get it. It's not to like blame anybody, right? The pain is real. The problems are totally real. We're just not looking in the right place to actually be able to make a difference. And so even inside of that, like there's a lot of conversation about self-love and the importance of self-love. And even that, I think needs to be, a different conversation depending upon who we're talking about. Because to love yourself as a woman, as a female bodied being, is going to mean something different. It's going to mean maybe that we begin to be okay with our bodies, right? With the way it looks, with the shape of things, with the smell of things, the growth of things, not to find things, disgusting or worrisome or um, yeah, displeasing in whatever ways. It's maybe to even like find the words to speak of certain things, like our genitals, right? Like to actually be able to ask for what we need, to know what feels good for us, what our needs are, what like the conversation inside of this is huge. It'll mean to actually stand up for ourselves and when something isn't okay to be like, no, I don't want to do that. Because this is the flip side of it too that I've seen. Like these pains and these difficulties come in as symptoms of indications of where we haven't respected our own needs and our own boundaries. So I would invite you to look in these areas. Is that, you know, even in your thoughts, what are you thinking? what are you maybe saying? What are you feeling that is harming yourself? That is uh, misogynist, that is, something that is dreading about you, about femaleness. What's the belief? What's that toxicity? And this is what we need to be able to catch, to see, to acknowledge, and to be able to unpack. And this is actually difficult. This is painful. I know for me, like when I settled to notice that what part of my, a huge part of like my challenge here is that I hate being a woman. It was like being punched in the gut, right? Like, how can I hate, like who and what I am? But it really is that. And when we actually stop to look at like what we're confronted with all the time, like how's it any wonder? How's it any wonder? So this is the important work to be doing. Um, yeah, I watched a podcast too that somebody had sent to me, and it was a female doctor and talking about perimenopause and menopause. And the phrase that she was using, she used it multiple times, was that uh, when the ovaries fail, she had this term, ovarian failure. And so even from like this, female medical, doctor who is, like on the side of, helping women more for us, use this terrible term, ovarian failure. And I said to my friend Tim, like, can we just stop and look at that? How is the ovary failing? The ovary has completed one function of its job at this point. It still has other things that it's doing, like in the release of hormones or things that we don't even know. Why would you call it a failure? There's so many ways our language, our expressions, our beliefs are undercutting um, and just violent towards us. And if we want to heal this for ourselves and have a better experience, and certainly have leave a better legacy for those young ones coming up after us, we need to look at this. Like we need to look at it and own it within ourselves, because if you think that it's not like active in you in some way, I think you're sadly mistaken. So, thank you for watching. If you've come this far, this is part of an ongoing conversation that I'm going to continue insisting upon. And yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please feel free to share, and also to share this with anyone that you think needs to hear it. I appreciate that tremendously. And I'm going to be doing a lot more work and offering in terms of like healing this, because it can be done and it needs to be done. It is not it's not the truth that because we're women, we suffer, right? We suffer because patriarchy in our world has insisted, and it's done a great job, over so many years at convincing us that we're less than, that we're broken, that we're inferior, that, that we deserve to suffer. And it's just a lie. And, we don't have time for this anymore. Like, it's time to nip it. All right. Thank you.